what I thought would be a great thing for us to do within this hour is to build out some of the screens that application administrators would need to manage all the little drop down values. So, for example, here we have requests. This is the main table for our application. Well, a request has got a status, request has got a category, request has got a priority. You've got assignment types, even departments. All these little lists here are probably going to have items with 3 to 5 values. They could have, in the case of departments, we could have 3 to 20 values, maybe. How many departments do you have within an organization? Now, that's just not willy-nilly all the departments in the organization, but these are departments in which they need some type of a service desk system for that department. So it might very well be just 3 departments: IT, facilities, and HR, perhaps. Okay. So there's a lot of lists in here, some database tables slash SharePoint lists that we need to create little edit screens for the application administrators for this application. So I thought this would be a great little thing to start off. And I'll be watching the live chat here for any questions, comments, any shout outs as we build this together. Okay. So I do have the application here. Now, what we'll see here, so this is all of the lists that we created in the last session. I believe it was yesterday during my lunch break. I did a live stream and we built out all of these lists here with all the fields based off of this design. Now, there is something with a lot of these lists that we'll be touching today, like the request statuses, the categories, the priorities, in which a lot of tables you might actually have. And in fact, Dataverse builds this into it. Some fields in there, or at least one field that will tell you if that record is active or not. Okay, so let's say we've got a request category out here and we're using the system for a few years and we had a special category. And then after a while, we're like, well, we don't need that category anymore. Well, instead of deleting that category and creating some orphan values over in the request table, well, why don't we just have categories have an additional field, perhaps all these other lists here, to have a is active field. So we can set that to false so that no new records can be created with a inactive record. But then also we maintain the data integrity for all of the history of the application. So that's still set there and that can't be lost. So we'll still keep those values in there, but we could have some values that are inactive so we don't lose any data. So we'll be creating some what are commonly called as CRUD screens. CRUD doesn't sound nice, right? CRUD is an acronym. So you've got C, create, R is read, U is update, and D is delete. Those are the main 4 database operations that you might deal with a database table or a record. You're either creating a record, you're viewing it, you're updating it, you're deleting a record. Okay. So these screens will do all of those things. So before we jump into that, I'm going to do one last thing, which is I sort of want to finalize some of this, the data design. Somebody says here, hello from Facebook. And I probably have to go over here to Facebook to see who that was. But I'll just leave it as hello. Thanks for stopping by. Glad to see that I'm just not here by myself talking to my camera. So thanks for stopping by. Appreciate that. All right. So, and also, by the way, something I probably should have mentioned at the beginning, if this is actually a course where we're building out a ticketing system, and if you want to be involved, if you want to participate in the group, I have a private Facebook group. I call it the Insiders Group. And I have a student intake form, and so you can participate in that, ask questions, and some of these live streams will only be in that group. So I definitely encourage you guys to fill out that student intake form. And if you don't see it, I don't think I have much in the description right now for this live stream, but if you go into this playlist here for any of these others, so let's say, for example, we go in this first one here, we should see that link down here. Yeah, right here. In fact, what I'll do is I probably should just paste that in here if I'm able to into the comment here. So that put it out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. All right. So So that's out there. So if you're not a part of that group, you can click on that link, and I just gather a little bit of information so I know what it is that you guys are dealing with. What are your problem points with Power Apps, so I can sort of tailor this course for you guys. Um, okay. So what I want to do here is I'll go through each of these and we'll add a column and we'll say is active, and we'll make that a bit field. Okay, and we'll do that for all of these. Okay, so is active bit request status. Now, not every table would have is active, although Dataverse does do that. Rachel, hey, hi from Nigeria. Nice to have you, Rachel. Um, good seeing you on here. I'll follow you on Twitter. Um, all right, so we have not all tables will have that. So, for example, the requests probably wouldn't have an is active. It's because the requests already have a statuses. Already has a status. So a ticket comes in, it's new, it's active, it's assigned, it's working on, then it finally ends up being complete or closed. So that's sort of like a status right there. So not all of these tables will have as inactive. Now, a lot of these you'll see here, like request status, we've got ID, title, sort order. So ID, title, sort order, ID, title, sort order. So a lot of these, if we look through them, we might actually want to have a sort order because we'll have a little drop down list for each of these values in various places throughout the app. And perhaps sometimes we don't want these items to be sorted alphabetically. Okay, for example, if a ticket comes in and a service desk staff is entering a new ticket into the system, we want the new item to be the default. We don't want it to be sorted alphabetically and select the, whatever the first is alphabetically, right? All right, so we have is active. I'm going to add it here to request statuses. Okay, that is, well, request priorities. There we go. We'll add that there. It, and just want to make, you always want to update this first if you're ever going to make a database change, and then go edit in the SharePoint list or in the back end, because if you edit in the back end, you're like, forget about the diagram. You want to always make sure your diagram's up to date. So, Sai, hopefully I pronounced that right. It says hi. Hi, back to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Yeah, very cool. All right, so assignment types, it's probably just going to be a good practice to make sure each of these has something like a sort, order, okay, and also is active. Make that a bit. Add that in there. And perhaps for the departments, if departments are listed, perhaps we want a sort order. And also an is active, and that active would be a bit, okay. Users could be separated from the organization, either fired or they resign or something like that. So we might want to have a is active for that. Okay, so I'm just sort of identifying everywhere where it would make sense. Um, request assignments. No, the request assignments would be okay. The tickets was assigned to this person, was assigned to this person. Doesn't really make sense to have an is active for that. SLA violations, yeah, probably so. So let's add that in there. Okay, looking around. All right, hey, Adam. Hopefully I pronounced that right. There's a little things on the A, so I don't know if that's pronounced differently, but he says hi all. Very cool. Appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with me during my lunch break. So we have show levels. Okay, so this could be a situation where we have is active if we don't want to use a particular show level. Okay, request notes, that wouldn't really have a status. It would be more like, okay, well, these were notes in the request, so it doesn't matter if they're active or not. There was a note that we're appending to that particular request, and I think we've pretty much got everything else that we needed to. Okay, so what I need to do is make sure. Now I'm going to move this screen and I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to share this little link here with you guys. You guys can view it, okay, and see it up to date. All right, so we have that. Now I'm going to move this up so I can glance at it here as I work with my SharePoint list, because we actually need to add all those columns in there real quick. So if you got multiple screens, you can have that off to a different screen as we do that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, I'm gonna just go through here and add all these new fields. So show levels, I have show levels. Now I'm just gonna go straight into these settings for each of these lists. It's the easiest way to add these columns here. So show levels. We do already have a sort order. We need to add this is active. Okay, is active. And I'm going to set this up to be a yes, no. Okay. And I'll scroll down and hit OK. And then the next one would be request statuses. Request statuses here. We'll go right into the settings. So this will just take us 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll actually jump into the fun Power App stuff here in just a few minutes, guys. So if you could bear with me, we definitely want to do things methodical and in a certain order so we don't miss anything that would eventually turn into a bug in our system, which would be a bad thing. Okay, so we've got request statuses. We'll go in here and say is active. Copy that on the clipboard there. Yes, no. Go down. Very good. Request statuses. So the next one we'll do is not request images. Go back over here. Assignment types. Okay, assignment types. Go into the settings there. And we want to make sure we have, I think we added a sort order here. Add an integer, or at least a new number there. Click OK. Add the new column there is active. We'll make it a check box. Yes, no. Now, what we should have been doing is we always want to make sure for these is active. I think the default for most columns, I always set if it's a yes, no Boolean, always make that false. But in this case, if it's a new record, chances are it's going to be inactive. Otherwise, we wouldn't be creating it. So I think that's good. Okay, very good. So we'll do that. And that was assignment type. So the next thing over would be request categories. Okay, sort order. Let's add in that is active. So this is the type of stuff that I don't want to do off screen. I know it's this little thing that we're doing here for the first few minutes is a little boring, but it's important that I do everything on camera. So if you guys are trying to follow along with me, it's like, well, your system looks different than what I have here, and I've been following every video. It's like, oh, well, I edited a bunch of stuff. It was a little boring, but whatever. I don't want to leave anybody behind. Make sure you guys see all the steps that I take to build out this system. Okay, so there's request categories, and we've got a hello from Texas. Well, hello, MCSE IT professional. Very cool. All right, so Microsoft certified systems engineer, right? So back in the day, I got my MCSD, my Microsoft certified solutions developer, and a few other. I work for Microsoft partners, and they really value the certifications. In fact, will pay base your pay increases based on all the certifications that you have. So very cool. MCSE. Angry Bat voice. The boring stuff is likely the most critical. Well, thanks for pointing that out, man. I appreciate that. I agree with that. Creating YouTube content, it's really disheartening when you create a video and you put your heart and soul into it, and you go out there and you say, "Oh, I've got 100 views," and then you look at the retention and 99% of them just dropped off, and there's only 1 or 2 people that actually watched it. And perhaps you guys that are in here with me and commenting, you guys are my 1 or 2%. So thank you. Yes, old school. My name is Marcelo. Well, hello, Marcelo. Nice to meet you. But yeah, I miss that the old days. I used to work with a bunch of MCSEs. I worked at a training center where we taught Microsoft Certified Technical, the official curriculum as an MCT. Worked with a lot of MCSEs teaching classes. Yeah, well, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, very cool. Thanks for stopping by, guys. This is great. This makes my day. All right, so we got request categories. So that's got the is active in there. Let's go look at departments, and we'll go in there. When you're building out a system, you want to make sure you're very methodical and as you're building things so you don't miss things. And if you miss things and things fall through the cracks, or you forget to write something down or forget to do something, a lot of times those can end up just being bugs, and bugs are hard to find sometimes, or you don't know what's causing them, and perhaps a user's encountering a bug and you can't recreate it on your end, and then you tell them, "Hey, I can't recreate it on my end." They're like, "Well, you don't believe me?" And it's just bugs are awful. All right. So, Saeed, can you describe your self-taught journey? Well, absolutely. So, I'll continue to try to keep making progress here and talk about myself. If you guys would like me to be a little narcissistic, they teach you as a YouTube creator, nobody really cares about you. It's just all about the value you can provide. So that's why I try to focus on. I try not to talk about myself too much, except through the perspective of like, okay, well, I'm out here making videos. Why should you listen to me? So I talk about myself a little bit, but yeah, I got into the field doing VB6. It's Visual Basic back before .NET was out. So this was like 1999, all the crazy rush to update all these COBOL programs. So I started my first programming class was COBOL back in 1999, 1998, perhaps. And so I got in, started using Visual Basic, then became a .NET developer when .NET came out, and I was getting my certifications and stuff, and teaching classes as an MCT. So I taught people how to be developers. And so as time went on, I always like to learn, and I learned best by actually teaching. So you guys are sort of doing me a favor by giving me an audience here, because it's actually reinforcing a lot of things, and you actually learn something very, very thorough if you have to teach others the concepts. So yeah, I got into teaching a lot of programming stuff, and then eventually, I sort of rubbed elbows with a lot of MCSEs, that were also MCTs, and I learned I had to set up my own classroom environment and set up my own Microsoft domain. Set up a domain controller and learn about DNS and DHCP and networking concepts and all that stuff. So, and eventually, I had an uncle that was a senior pastor down here in Orlando, Florida, and said, "Hey, we need somebody to run our network and do our website and teach high school seniors how to get into the IT world." So I did all that, and I actually created a little ticketing system working for that church slash school. There were people that were like, "Hey, Darren, my computer's broken and the printer doesn't work," and like everybody's got all these computer problems. And one of the executive pastors took me aside, like, "Darren, you're going to have to create some type of ticketing system, otherwise you're going to want to off yourself from everybody just pulling you different directions." I'm like, "That's actually a great idea." So first I created a paper form. So you think this was you know, one discussion I've had here in the last day in the insiders group on Facebook with you guys was, how much is the system worth that we're building here? You know, back at that church, I was dealing with paper forms of tickets. Hey, what's your name? What's your email? What's your phone number? What's your problem? What's the priority? Of course, everybody wants to say high priority, right? And so you've got organizations out there that don't have a ticketing system in place, and they need one, and they need something perhaps custom built. And that's why they're reaching out to you, a Power Apps developer. How much is that system worth? How much are you going to charge as a freelance Power Apps developer? Are you going to charge them 500, a few thousand? How much is that worth? What value are you providing? And or let's say a company hires you to be a Power Apps developer to write a system that they need for the organization. And let's say as an entry level guy, they're paying you $50,000 as a annual salary, and it takes you 2 months to do it. And now that's talking to the customers, that's everything, gathering requirements, pretty much all this stuff that I'm covering with you guys, designing it, building the system, testing it, any revisions, all this type of stuff. So you're being paid $50,000 for an annual salary, and then it takes you 2 months to build a system. Like, well, how much is that worth? I think we figured that out to be you're making about $4,000, or at least the company is paying you 4,000 gross, and it takes you 2 months. So you could say that's worth $8 or $10,000. So if you take this system that you're building with me, why couldn't you sell that for $8 or $10,000? So that's something to think about. All right, moving on. MCSC, I do have a program analyst, also old school Pascal, COBOL, Clipper. Oh yeah, my first job, I worked with guys that worked in Clipper. Um, yeah, you're bringing back the old days for me, man. uh, Now on to the Power Apps journey. Yeah, I've been a C# developer for probably a good 20 years, and then I was at a state agency here in Florida, and they were wanting me to work with Angular, which I don't like. I've worked with front end stuff, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I don't like to be in the thick of it and just work in that front end. I like to work with server side stuff that generates the front end, so I don't have to worry about. I don't really care for HTML, CSS, and front end stuff. So when they offered me, hey, would you mind taking a look at Power Apps? I'm like, absolutely. I knew it was a rapid application development tool. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, and I loved it. So maybe not at first. At first, I'm like, oh, there's this limitation and this limitation, and as I learned, I'm like, actually, there's a lot of workarounds to what I think are limitations. Yeah. So, Rachel, hi, Darren. How did you start Power Platform and steps you took to get better in the Power Platform? Well, thank you for the question, Rachel. Yeah. As I was just talking about, Angular is a front end technology, no JavaScript, and I was probably working about a year in Angular with a C# application. I hated it. I just absolutely hated it, and it's just, you could be a programmer or a developer, or just work in a technical sense, doing something, working with some technology, and people sort of gravitate. There could be like 20 different things out there that a programmer could do or should, but you sort of gravitate to one thing. Sort of like a doctor, well, let's say you need a surgeon to a very specific surgery to occur on your body. You're not just going to go to a family physician. So even doctors, they specialize. So that's almost for any field. You could have a family doctor's like, no, I want to work this way, and I don't want to do this and that. So something might suit them more than something else. So same thing with software development, where there's different types of development that I like and I don't like. Too much into the weeds, too many details. C++ development, yeah, that C#. I really enjoyed C#, but with web development, I really hated how it just HTML and CSS always seemed very volatile to me, and that's probably because of how long I've been dealing with browsers in the years in the industry. Things are getting really standardized here for a while, for quite a few years, but man, just dealing with IE and dealing with Firefox, and they're rendering things differently. It's just like I hate that. I hate that. But you do everything in Power Apps, and it generates it a certain way, and I did notice their IE did something weird. It did not like SVGs, and thank goodness that has been sort of discontinued. IE. But yeah, how I got started in Power Platform is I hated Angular, and so there's a state agency here in Florida that I was working for as a contractor for a good 5 or 6 years. Like, hey, you mind taking a look at Power Apps? I'm like, yeah. So that's how I got into it, and it was sort of a self-taught thing. It was a rough few months because as a programmer, you're not used to the way things are set up in Power Apps. Things are very declarative, and there's a little bit of imperative work, but I'm used to just straight up imperative everything. So it took a while to, like, I would want to say textbox.text equals hello world. And you can't do that in Power Apps. You got to say use a variable. And I was like, wow, why do I have to use a variable? I just wanted to assign it something, So there was things like that. And there were also a lot of things that I sort of struggled with, and perhaps I shouldn't have. But what I did was I created a free e-guide that pretty much outlines all the lessons learned that I did in the first 6 months. And I should probably share that, because I'm sure some of you might be watching this like, hey, what's that? Tell me more about that. So let me provide that link here in the chat as well. Most of my videos that you go and look at on my channel will have a link to my free guide. And I call it the 10 things that you must know about Power Apps. And there's things about how I deal with, like, what are the reasons why you should never use Power Apps? I've got, good 6 or 7 reasons there. I've got, what I think about forms, what I think about the data table. And so there are like things I was trying to get to work, and I'm like, oh, I should be using galleries instead of data tables, perhaps, or I should be using Patch instead of forms. Man, forms, I just absolutely have had a horrible uh experience with. If you ever worked with forms, you ever had it reset on you. That just made my head want to explode. you know so let me focus on this just for a minute, otherwise I'm going to get sidetracked. I do have ADD, so let me get this for you guys here. Okay, so I've got these video. Let me go to these videos here, and I've got, let's see, one of my, yeah, let's say this video has got the link, I'm sure. Here we go. All right. So free Power Apps guide. And so this is a free guide. You don't have to pay anything for it. It's just my gift to you guys and my lessons learned. Okay. All right. So moving on. So Rachel, if you have any more questions, I guess I was self-taught, and also a lot of YouTube videos. A lot of the guys. I look up to Shane Young and Reza and Daniel Christian, and there's probably a good 6 people out there. Of course, you guys probably know about these guys as well. So yeah, I do a lot of search. I love YouTube. I typically don't go to Google for a search. I'll do a search within YouTube, and so probably most of you have found me on YouTube as well. So DBase, yeah, DBase. That's bringing back some memories as well, man. All right, what else here? I've been doing SharePoint admin for 10 plus years. Wow. Now moving system developer role. Have two still have the two still sets back end and front end. Yeah, very, very cool. Now, and that church that I worked at back, this is 2006, I think. Yeah. I put in SharePoint, I think it was called WSS, the free version of SharePoint, into that church, created as their internet system. So I've been using SharePoint for a while. I haven't been administering it that all the time since, but again, a lot of nostalgia. Uh, as I said, looking forward to your content. Probably getting your online course. Okay, very cool, very cool. Yeah. So make sure you fill out the intake form and get in there, and we'll get you added to the Facebook group. And absolutely, so there's been all kinds of other chat and stuff going on in that group. And there's some things that I really can't share on YouTube. I mean, it's publicly out there and stuff, but in a group, I can feel a little more freedom to share all kinds of things. But all right, so I'm going to get back in here and try to finish this stuff up here. Okay, so we got departments, and what we have here, we don't have a sort order, doesn't look like. So let's add a sort order in there. Sort order. Sure. You got me talking. You guys got me talking about myself. I feel like I filled this video with talking about myself. Okay, so we got that in there. I at least want to get all these new columns in here. And I will need to. So we got 30 more minutes. So we've got 30 minutes. So I'm hoping we'll be able to make some good progress on here. So we got sort order. We'll add in the is active. Is active. Okay. And we'll make that a yes, no. Okay. All right, moving on. We've got departments, users. It's probably the next good one there. I probably don't need a sort order for users, but is active, definitely. So something I think I'll mention to you guys here. I have another playlist out here. If you guys want to check it out, and click on the channel here, go to playlist. There is a WhatsApp chat. So I'm actually a part of a WhatsApp chat, and I'm not an admin of that group, but I go in there. I try to help people out as I have time. I don't have a lot of time for one-on-one help, but I try to post some helpful video links in there, and also I've offered to do some Zoom calls to get you guys to come in, and I've invited you guys to come in as well. If you go in here, there's links to the chat if you guys want to be a part of the WhatsApp chat. Okay, it's right there. And then also I have all the Zoom calls in here as well. Okay. So so far there's been I guess 3. Yeah. Well, this one was announcing it. So some of the links are in there. So this should actually be, if I can, I'll mess with that later. But I just wanted to mention that because if you guys wanted to ask me someone, I like to devote at least one answer where you guys could come into a Zoom call and ask me whatever questions. And there's only been 1 or 2 people so far. So people have been really shy. So if you want to, if you guys want to talk to me with your voice, and I've invited people to come on this live stream. I use this StreamYard. I've invited people in the insiders group to come in, but people are shy, and you don't have to show your face, by the way, but it would be nice to at least hear your voice so I can talk to you in real time. And it also provides a way for you guys to share your screen. So if you're building this app with me and you guys are having some hard time, some issues or something, I can go in there, I can request control, and I can say, oh, you just need to click on this and write this code, and sort of help people out that way. So I've been trying to do that one time a week on the weekends. And perhaps I could do like some lunch sessions, lunch break sessions, doing that as well. But and those links should be in there in the insiders group as well. All right, so is active. We'll say yes, no, and we'll go down and click OK. So that list was users. Okay, so the last one that we have to add. Now let's make sure request priorities. Let's make sure we have that in there. Okay, there's sort order, but we do not have the is active, so I'm glad I checked that one. For some reason, I always think that's on my clipboard. It's not all the time, so that's in there. Okay, is active. Okay, and I think the last one is the SLA violations. I know that's a big deal with ticketing systems. Like, the other departments in the organizations, like, hey, we have the IT department here for a reason. It's to help us out, and we need some type of an agreement that you guys answer our tickets or get back to us within an hour or 24 hours, something like that. All right, so SLA violations, we're going to add in there is active. Make that a yes, no. All right, so we've got that. Boom. All right, very good. All right, I think we're good there. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to site contents, and this is what I do here. Now, if you go over to our Power Apps app here for me, now I'm expecting you guys all to be following along and building out this application with me, okay? Not just being a spectator, okay? So hopefully you have built out like some type of an application shell that you always start from. That's what I'd recommend. I have a whole playlist on doing that, or you can purchase mine. Um, let's see, where are my playlists? So I have a whole playlist here called "How to Create Your Own Power Apps Template." So if you don't want to purchase mine, you can go in there and build one out yourself. So I'm expecting you guys to. So I'm not going to go through, hey, this is how you create a menu. I actually have like 3 or 4 videos about how to create a menu. So it's sort of like to skip that. And so if you have a good application shell, it's going to have a menu in there. It's going to have an application header and everything. Okay. So I'll be starting from my application shell, my application template. And so we have our SharePoint site here. And I'm going to go to the root of our SharePoint site, and I'm just going to copy that. And when we add our SharePoint list, we just add them all as one go. Okay, so connectors, There's SharePoint. I'm going to click on my credentials there. I'm going to paste the name of that thing there. I'm going to click connect. Now it was showing there at the top. All right, so here we go. Assignment types, departments, quest assignments, quest categories, so on and so forth. We'll add all these guys. Boom, we've got all these tables that have no data in them yet. All right. But that's going to change very quickly here. All right. So what I have here, if I run my application, I've got different sections of my app, and my application template has got some security roles already built into it that I know every application is going to need. Okay. So I know if you go in here to, and I show you how to build all this out yourself. So you don't have to use mine. You can build your own, okay, from that playlist. But here's an example. Here's my on and start, and I've got all kinds of documentation in there, um, all kinds of good stuff. Okay. And then what I have built in here, if I scroll up here to the top, so I say, so I've got roles. So I've got like basic users. Okay. So if you're not attached to any particular group, at least you're a user, right? You got to the app, and you're a user. Then you've got app developer. So hopefully, if in this case, it's just going to be me. Okay. But if you're working on a team and you got different people in there at different times, I've done a little bit of that as well. You can use the co-authoring feature that is still experimental. I didn't have a good experience with that in one situation where I needed to use it. Perhaps you guys have had a good experience. Okay, so we have this variable var is app developer is app admin. Any app is going to need to have some type of app admin role, and also testers. Okay, so for my application, I've got a little thing that shows up just for the testers that will just sort of display things that I don't want displayed to all the users. It's just for testing. Okay, so I have a separate role for that. Okay, so for the application administrators, I've got this little area here, application administration. Of course, it's a blank screen. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to take this screen here, and I've got different screens for different purposes. Like if I want a blank new screen, I'll go with something like this. Part of my application template, I've got one for tabs. Like if I ever want to create a screen with some tabs, boom, I just copy this and it's got all this gallery set up with the buttons and everything. Okay. Then I've got a new screen where I've got a gallery set up and I got some text boxes. I think I might use this for the screens we're going to build. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I say duplicate. Now, being a software developer, I'm used to having the benefits of an object-oriented environment. Now, I don't have that with Power Apps. So what I rely on is not to try not to duplicate myself. I create copies. I set things up exactly how I think I will want them, and I'll just copy those things. That's about as close to reusability as I have. Well, you do have components. I do make use of components, of course, and you can see those here. I've got an app header, a nav menu, and this header here. And these were, I think, were copies. I was testing something out one time. Those should be removed at some point. But I've got a new screen. I'm going to rename this. So the Microsoft recommended practice and their coding standards for Power Apps. So this should be proper naming convention. So the first letter in each of the words should be capitalized. This is going to be edit. I can edit screen for. Let's go with priorities. Let's start with priorities. Perhaps, yeah. Edit request priorities screen. Okay, and that's also in there in the recommended practice that you actually have the word screen in there. Okay, so just keep that in mind. A lot of people are like, why would you put screen in that's redundant? Why would you put spaces in something? I don't like to put spaces in SharePoint list names or columns because you always have to prefix and append with a little apostrophe to sort of reference that. But with the screen names, it's actually a Microsoft practice that you put that in there because people with disabilities, let's say visually impaired, they will use screen readers. So it actually makes it easy and it makes your app more accessible. So that's a good practice. All right, so I'm going to move this screen down with the other related screens. Okay, so screens for users I'll have up here, and then these are my utility screens that I want to copy, and then usually below that I'll have all of my new screen, blank screen, and then I have application managers, stuff that normal users probably won't see. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to have here is I'm going to have, so we're going to have stuff on here. So we're going to have title. Okay. So this is request priorities. So just to throw out, just let you know what's going to go in here. So a ticket that comes in is going to have a priority, and the user can set this. Oh, either a low, a medium, or normal. And then we have a high priority. So we'll start with those three priorities. We could have like, oh, super urgent emergency. Perhaps we could have five different. The low priority means just get to it whenever you can. You know, Santhan says, can we make responsive app and components? Yes, you can. Now, what I do as I build out maps, and as you're building out this app, if you're following along with us, Santhan, is you can do whatever you want. Okay. What I do with Power Apps, I don't worry too much about making the app responsive because um, I already know that they're going to use it in a browser, a tablet, and also this format can be used on a phone. You just turn your phone, sideways, and it works just fine. And I've got a Samsung 3, so it sort of turns into a tablet. And so I get that in the requirements. If they say that they need a phone app, well, I'll just make a little phone app. So for an example, this ticketing system, I'm going to create it in this format. And then, in fact, I don't know that you guys can really see this. Let me, blow that up a little more so you guys can see that a little better. Um, I'm going to make a mobile version of this app for the field technicians that are going out and trying to solve these tickets. Okay, so I'll make a version of it, a much scaled down version, just for the, like they say, the user stories or the use cases for those, and that'll be a portrait landscape, and this will be the. So I know a lot of people that are, there's a lot of desire for the responsive apps. I've always created them not using responsive. I might create some videos for that and talk about that more, but I'm not going to make that like a central theme for this course or for building this particular app. So I might add that in the future, but I'm not really going to focus on that now. Just to show you what you can do within an app, go into the settings, go into the display, and you can set these things up. You want a portrait, landscape. You can set the exact size, um, the ratio, and all that type of stuff. And I've always built my apps. I probably have built a good 50 different applications, either what I consider mobile or portrait, and then landscape. And I just haven't had that much of a need. I know if you're building a web app responsive, if you're building a regular, just a website or something, responsive is really important because you want it to work both within a phone and a computer. Um, and I do think that's important in that case. And perhaps it's people still find it important with Power Apps. I just don't find it that much of a priority as I'm building apps. But if you know that that is a requirement in your app, absolutely, you need to be building that with that in mind. Okay, very good. Thanks for the question. All right, so what we've got here for the priorities is we will put in here, I'm just gonna leave it as title for now. Then we're gonna also have a sort order. Okay, and it's just gonna be a number. So this is gonna probably be a much less wide, perhaps 100, something like that. Santhan says, thank you. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for bringing that up. And if you guys really like Darren, we want to make all our Power Apps responsive. You know what? I'm gonna create content that will cover that. Okay. And if there is a large desire, big demand for that, even in this course, I'll go down that road and we'll talk about it. Pretty much what you guys are looking for. That's what I'm gonna be making. That's why I asked for all the, I'm starting to do more live streams so I can get more interaction with you guys, so I can hear and see what you guys need and want. Okay, so we'll have that. Now we won't put a value, a text value in there. We'll just take that completely out. Um, and we'll actually make this format to be numbers so they can only put numbers in there for the sort order. Okay, and then for notes, we'll have probably just take that out for now. Okay, but we will add in a toggle. Now, I can do this one of two ways. So this sort of shows the power of the my application template, or a template that you build yourself. Is you can add in here toggle. And what's the problem with this toggle? If I run this, that's got a blue color that clashes with my theme that I've picked. Okay. So what I do is I have a specific screen, and I call it copy controls from here. So I have everything that's built on my theme, and my themes are based on variables that I set up. And I actually have all kinds of different um, themes. Part of my thing here, I can change it dynamically if I wanted to. And see this little toggle here, it actually changes with the theme. Okay, I like it to all be dynamic. Um, okay, so I'm going to pick this toggle button here. It's got the theming built into it. I'm going to go back here, paste it, and I am going to get rid of that blue one that doesn't have any theming in it. Okay, right. So I want to get back the theme that I had configured for this application. And I might make sort order a little more wide, 160 perhaps, and copy these labels, and even these labels, these text boxes, you use the theming. Okay, and if I'm trying to place something very precisely, I just like to zoom in a little bit here. Now I might make that more like right aligned. And something I'll tell you guys: save early, save often. So if you're working in Power Apps, Power Apps should be saving every 2 minutes. But if you want to create those restore points, okay, you want to make sure you're doing a Control S and actually saving manually. Okay, because a lot of times the undo does not work in Power Apps. So there might be a day when you might need to rely on that. Okay. Now I won't call this sort order. This should be is active. Okay. Now I'm going to look at all the other lists. So we've got title, sort order is active. Those are the three main things that we need to put in here. Okay. Um, so I might move this stuff around a little bit. So we don't need all that space being taken up. And a lot of my screens, I've got these little guides I put in that aren't viewable by the users. I'm going to select them because I want them to be on that screen as well. I'll paste it here. Okay. So just to show you what I use these guides for, if I turn this off, of course, the user's not going to, only testers can see this. But I like to sort of line things up with these little, so these squares are 20 by 20. And it sort of shows me, and Power Apps will help me line things up with stuff like this. Okay, so see, I can size that right down there. Same thing for my galleries and everything. Okay. All right. And I can make copies of these. Guys, here's a little tip. If you're working inside of Power Apps and you want to zoom out, or you switch screens, it keeps on zooming, and you hit Control 0 and it will zoom out almost perfectly. Okay. So you might want to put your button right there. Okay. Showing you guys all my secrets, which is the point, right? All right. So we'll put that in here. So a little bit of space there. Okay. Now it's really important we do this first one right, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy and paste of this whole screen. And almost all these little lists that are going to be driving a lot of the drop downs in our system, we have, this title thing here, sort order, and is active. Okay, we'll have a save button here. We have an add new. Okay. And probably what I would want to do is you want to select all these and eventually we'll put them all in a group. But I think the editing of these values, I want to be at the top of the screen. Oop. Thankfully the undo worked there. Now I can drag this up. Very good. Now I can take these drop downs, put them right here. Okay, what do you guys think of that? Question is, why do we have all this white space over here, right? Well, I've got an idea for that. Um, so this is the time when I'm sort of designing a screen. This is like a really basic screen. I didn't want to do a whole balsamic design. Just wanted to move things around and see how I like them, and then get it really precise and right because I'll want to actually move this, actually duplicate this for the others. So I'm going to try to select that text box and not make it so wide. Let's make it more like 400. Okay, and maybe we can put all this on like on one line, not have it take up so much room. Now, do you guys, here's a question for you guys. So you see how this toggle is overlapping this text box? The last thing I want to have happen is somebody go in here to click in the text box to enter something and then like, oh, I can't get the cursor to go in there. You see that? So it's actually selecting this toggle. Okay. So if I want to move this behind the text box, everybody knows, oh, well, you just got to go do this and align and or reorder and say move backward. But man, that's a lot of clicks. Got to go over here, click, 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 and let's say you've got to move it up even more. Man, that's a pain in the butt, right? Well, what's the keyboard shortcut? It's Control square bracket. Square bracket. The left bracket is move down, okay, and then the right bracket is move up. It's really important. Use that all the time. Okay. All right. So we've got all this stuff here. Um, what I'm envisioning, guys, so I'll let you in on what I'm thinking here for the left side, is we've got all these different lists for the application administrators to add, edit. Okay. So we have statuses, categories, priorities, maybe departments, assignment types, okay, show levels. So what I want to do is when an application administrator is in here modifying these things, we've got like a little list. So we've got a menu here, but I don't want to add a menu item for all of those things. I want a little menu perhaps right here that will allow me to move between all of those. Okay. So that's what I'm envisioning. So I want to leave at least a little bit of space over here for that. So I think I want to have a little more room for this. What do you guys think? And in fact, we could save more room by adding little icons. That would actually give us a lot more room. Okay, Marcel, you got a drop. All right, looking forward to the recording. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for stopping in. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. And I have to drop in 5 minutes too. By the way, guys. So we'll have to. Whenever I do come to the ending here, I'll stop myself. I'll stop working so you guys can see everything I'm doing, and we'll just pick up in the next session. Okay. So I'm going to try to get as far as I can in the next few minutes. Okay. So move that over a little bit. And, we could probably get away with making this not so wide, maybe something like 300. Okay. Now, I would love to hear what you guys think about the design, like how I'm doing these control, how I'm setting up these controls. So right now I don't want to see anything there. Okay, so title. I might actually say value title there. Value title sort order is active. And then add new and save. We could do icons. And we could also stack these buttons. Love it how everything just sort of lines up there. Okay, this doesn't look too bad. What do you guys think of that? Now, if I take out the debugging stuff, and then we've got a gallery here that's going to display all of our stuff. Yeah, what do you guys think of that? Does that look okay? You think it looks nice? Okay, now we could set up a little bit of a border here. I like borders around stuff. My wife, who is a designer, said, "No, Darren, you don't need borders. It makes your application look dated." I think it looks nice, but you guys can do it however you want in your application. I'd love to hear what you guys think, though. We have our theme, primary dark. That's what I like to use for that. So we could have something like this, dashed. We could also, if you look at our color palette that we're working with, we go down to copy controls from here. Oh, come on. Right here, do control 0. We've got a secondary light. We could have a border with that, or even that primary light. That might look good, primary light. But I think that is, yeah, that's what we're using for the background there. Secondary light. Oh, I sort of like that. A nice light gray background. And then for this, maybe primary light. So there's like a faint border. Maybe you could go with a solid for that. Generally, borders I like to be a little more solid though, darker than what the fill is. So for the fill, we have secondary light, and then we could actually tweak that. We do a color fade, and let's say we don't want to fade it, we want to make it darker. We use that and then give it a negative value, say negative 20% on it. You see how it's a little darker? I want something a little more subtle. 10%. Okay. You guys like that gray over this? So we have this light teal here. And I didn't want to duplicate it there as well. So also what we could do, we have all of our labels above our controls here. This little is active could actually go up here. Okay. Could sort of space things out a little bit so everything doesn't seem so crunched up. Make that 100 so it doesn't overlap anything. Okay. I think we're looking good here. Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks.